right, here we are, T's Weird Week Live. I'm T. Krulos.
And I'm Heidi Erickson.
Hey, Heidi, how are you doing?
Spec fricking tacular.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's going to be 65 degrees tomorrow.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a head cold. And
Oh,
I think I very typically do get a head cold right when the seasons are changing from cold to hot.
oh,
Like, I
that's
don't
very
know why that
festive.
is.
It's
Yeah.
very festive. Like
So,
that.
but don't worry, I'm drinking plenty of whiskey.
Oh, good. There you go. There you
So,
go. Grandma's down home remedy. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. That's actually funny. Like when I worked in restaurants, which I did for quite some time, the going common knowledge was the second that you started to feel a cold coming on, the way to fix it was to go and get absolutely just wasted, just wrecked, and the next day you'd have a hangover. But then after that, you'd be fine and it would be gone. And I tell you, it worked like 8 times out of 10. So I don't know. Maybe you. I don't know. Try
I
it.
I do. I think a hot toddy in
Mm.
particular, very good
Oh,
cold remedy.
well, I mean, even if it doesn't work, you've still had a hot toddy.
Yeah,
So
right, right.
I feel like you win there for sure. Okay, cool. Well, I'm sorry that you're having a little sickness. That's not that fun, but I'm glad it's going to be warm and nice. That's really exciting. Do you know
Yes.
what's sad? Is if we were in ancient Greece right now, it would be Bacchanalia. That would be
Uh,
really, you know what I mean, you guys? We could be like doing, man, the Greeks were always just having some festival that involved just getting drunk and having sex with random people. Those guys knew how to party. Like, there was no Easter. That's not what they did. They had Bacchanalia, which sounds way funner, and you don't have to go to church or wear uncomfortable shoes at any point.
or clothes. You can wear a toga.
Right. No pants. You don't have to, which is great because I'm not going to wear pants tomorrow. I might not wear underpants either. That's how I'm going to celebrate the coming of spring. No underpants. You heard it here first.
Well, it's good it'll be warm because maybe I'll at least stick my head outside tomorrow and get some fresh air. That
There
might
you
do me
go.
some good too.
Yeah, you're going to be great. It's going to be super fun. I'm sure there'll be tons of people out pre St. Patrick's
Oh,
Daying
shit, yeah.
in the 65-degree weather.
Oh, damn. Yeah, that's gonna be ugly.
Yeah, it is. I feel
That's,
so bad for people who work in bars. Like, really, you're gonna have
oh,
St. Patrick's Day and the first nice day of the year on the same day.
oh. The
What a
worst
mess.
the worst single service industry shift I've ever worked was for an event that still happens, I'm sure, on the east side called the Shamrock Shuffle.
Oh Christ, yeah.
And I was working the door at Landmark Lanes,
No.
and it was a catastrophe.
I'm sorry.
Really bad.
I'm really sorry, and I hope that you're getting the help for that you need and so deeply require.
I still
Yeah,
remember it after all these years. I still remember what a shitty day that was.
yeah. I definitely had a friend of mine invite me to go out for St. Patrick's Day, and I was like, I can get drunk and make bad choices at home for free.
Yeah,
So, no, I'm
no.
going to pass on that. Thanks. Also, it has nothing to do with being Irish, and I'm not the biggest fan St. Patrick ever had. I think anybody who's the pagan persuasion would not be a super big fan of St. Patrick
Yeah.
because his whole claim to fame was that he chased all the snakes out of Ireland. Fun fact, there were no fucking snakes in Ireland. He's talking about the pagans. They got rid of all the pagans and replaced them with the Catholic Church, which worked out so well for Ireland.
Ugh.
Like, why are we celebrating that? I don't get it. Why can't we just get drunk and have it be what it is? Why? Why? Why?
Right. So today's episode, we were chatting online. Um, Obviously, everyone knows there's a terrible situation going on in Ukraine,
Yeah.
and like all wars, there are stories that are coming from what's going on there, and some of them are absolutely true, and some of them might have a little truth to them, and some of them are more like a folk story. And
Right.
I think that's good because I think in times like that, people really need folklore
They do.
to have something to be inspired by or give them hope in these terrible situations.
Yeah.
So I think we started the dialogue because you found this image circulating around social media about a zookeeper in Kiev. Do You want to tell us more about that?
Oh, this is okay. So, as you said, there's a lot of these stories going around. I'm sure everybody at this point has heard about the sunflower grandma who
Mm-hmm.
essentially cursed these Russian soldiers and said one of the hardest things I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
There's actually like a recording of her having this interaction with these soldiers where they come up and they're kind of like, why don't you just leave? We don't need to make a whole drama. And she's like, why don't you go fuck yourself? And they were like, no, come on, seriously, why don't you just go? And she gave them a handful of sunflower seeds, and sunflowers are the national flower of Ukraine, and said, why don't you take these sunflower seeds and put them in your pocket, so at least when you die, sunflowers will grow from your bodies, like your corpses. So it's
That
just,
is damn cold.
oh man,
That is cold
oh,
as ice.
and
Oh my
I
god.
just
I love it.
love it. And like when she said it, she was just being a bad bitch. Like she was just
Yeah.
telling him what was up. But at this point, she has like been aligned with a very famous like mythological figure from Slovak like mythology, who is the Baba Yaga.
Mhm.
And Baba Yaga is, and it, I was, as you know, I've been researching Ukrainian folktales this week, and it's a little bit tricky because borders are not real. They're a made up thing that we made up. And Russia and Ukraine specifically all used to be part of the same like group of like of peoples. They're Slovak countries. That's just what they were, and because those people all came from the same kind of place, they share a lot of the same mythology, and it's just a different variation of whatever. You know how like some places chili has noodles and some places chili doesn't have noodles.
Yeah.
Chili doesn't have noodles, by the way, you guys. That's fucked up. That's hot pot. Stop that. Baba Yaga is different to Russian people than she is to Ukrainian people, and in different, even through different parts of Russia, which of course is a massive, huge country. But in Ukraine specifically, she's generally regarded as somebody that you didn't fuck with. Like, but she could be a protector as well, which makes sense why they're associating Baba Yaga with the sunflower grandmother. There's also this guy they're calling the Beastmaster of Kiev,
Yeah.
which, in case you guys don't know, like you're not supposed to say Kiev. That's the Russian pronunciation. Kiev is how the Ukrainians pronounce it, and it's their capital, so that's how we're going to say it. The Beastmaster of Kiev. There was a huge zoo in Kiev, massive. There was, in fact, a harrowing series of stories about them trying to get all of these animals out of Kiev and like figuring out how to feed them and like packing them into trucks while like guns and explosions are going on all around them, and like they got all the animals out allegedly. The myth is that one of these zookeepers, they think the myth is that there's a guy going around with a panther, like a big panther, and attacking the Russian troops. And I mean, that's pretty dope. They say they're like, I bet he's one of the zookeepers from the zoo in Kiev who stayed behind with this big cat.
Yeah.
This like terror of the Russian troops is the Beastmaster of Kiev, which, first of all, great name,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
fantastic. Somebody called the marketing department. Well fucking done. But that doesn't mean he's real. I hate to say it doesn't actually mean that he's real. Anytime there's a war, there's going to be a lot of people doing a lot of really difficult things and a lot of people doing a lot of seemingly impossible things to survive. Human beings are super good at catastrophe. We're actually awesome at it. We do our best work when things have gone right and truly sideways. But stories like the Beastmaster of Kiev could just be this myth that has sprung up, like you said, so that people have hope, so that they feel like in these impossible circumstances, there are impossible things that are happening in their favor, because people do, they need to believe in that stuff. And sometimes that is weird propaganda that people use to like scare people and like do psychological warfare with them. Like it's very well known at this point that the United States government used the legend of a particular kind of blood-sucking vampire spirit when they were in Vietnam to
Oh,
like,
okay. Yeah.
you remember that?
Yeah.
uh I mean, they admitted to it. This is a thing they did. They went around and they would like pull these like regular people, not necessarily soldiers off of the street at night and like mutilate them and hang them up in trees and stuff and do things so that it implied that it had been done by this vicious folk creature, like this cryptid, so
Yeah.
that people were afraid to go out at night.
Oh
Um,
shit, I can't remember the name. I remember I heard the name. I can't remember the name of the creature.
I don't remember the name of the creature,
Yeah.
um, but it was similar. It was similar to a vampire. It was like
Yeah.
closely related to a vampire, and it worked. People didn't want to go out at night. They were scared. They were scared to death that this thing was out there, and even like people tend to have more belief in those folk stories because I don't know. Did you ever live way out in the country, T? Like, did you ever live in the middle of God's green back nowhere? Never
No.
happened.
No. No.
Okay. Well, you should try it. It's a real fun way to completely become disconnected from reality because, like, the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night, you start to feel like, yeah, maybe Dogman, maybe vampires, maybe the Beastmaster of Kiev. Like, you don't fucking know. Um, it's real easy to believe that. And it's real easy to believe those kinds of things in super stressful situations. So,
Yeah.
people who are already dealing with like the harrowing aspects of war, especially for the people of Ukraine, because the people of Ukraine, most of the people who are defending Ukraine right now are not military people.
Right.
Like Ukraine doesn't have a huge military. That wasn't a real thing. Most of the people who are defending Ukraine are just people. They're just regular random, like the guy who works at the fucking convenience store is just like, okay, well, I'm in charge of this group of dudes and we're going to defend this block. And that's just how it is. So these people are scared like they're scared shitless. They're scared to death. So they need some of this. I'm kind of curious because we in America right now are hearing a lot about like the bold and courageous people of Ukraine as well. We should. But Vladimir Putin, who is the evil Muppet who runs the Soviet Union, was the head of the secret police for like 35 years and
Hmm.
is a master of propaganda. Like that's his speciality. That's his favorite shit in the entire world. So I'm wondering what kind of creepy, weird stuff the Russian military is doing because
Oh, well.
there's got to be something, right? Like there's got to be
Yeah.
something.
There's a lot of, and it's not necessarily just Russians, but there's a lot of deliberate misinformation being spread about Ukraine. There are conspiracy theorists who are saying Ukraine is a
Sure.
false flag and nothing is happening there.
Right.
So, and they'll use pictures or video from stuff that did not happen in Ukraine at all, but they'll put like a fake news banner on it and be like, hey,
Wow.
look, this is totally fake, blah, blah, blah. Um,
Yeah.
I, I just want to share something from Shane. Shane has helped us out here. He found the Wikipedia entry. Wandering Ghost is
Oh, there
apparently
you
what
go.
that Vietnam vampire was called, and it's a psyop operation. And there's a Wikipedia entry you can look for. Operation Wandering Soul was the name of the operation.
Ooh, that's good. That's really good. Did you guys out there ever watch the cartoon from the 80s called Gem and the Holograms?
Oh yeah.
Anybody with the rocks? Like, yeah, super fantastic. In that cartoon, there was like this computer that knew everything about everything all the time and
Hmm.
helped them like do rock and roll mysteries or whatever. That's Shane. Shane is our computer from Gem and the Holograms. He just pops up every now and again. I was like, I got it right here. Good job,
That's
Shane.
awesome. Yes, thanks, Shane.
Good job. Yeah, like I heard that actually. I don't know if I've just created a really like hermetically sealed media bubble, which I try so hard not to do. I try so hard not to do. But I've heard that there are like people in America right now,
Yeah.
like who are like, oh well, Ukraine belongs to Russia anyway, and oh, it's not that bad. And I mean, how can they know
The
that Russia's invading Ukraine?
Yeah. The largest, or the person who has the biggest platform for that, I won't say his name, but I will say that it rhymes with fucker, and he has his own show on Fox, and he's been spreading a lot of that.
Oh, cute. Um, well, super. That's great. There's a lot. I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories flying around about what's going on and what's supposed to be going on next too. I had read the first place that the Russian army took when they invaded Ukraine, like one of the first places they took was Chernobyl. Did you
Yeah,
know that?
yeah, yeah,
One of the first places they took was Chernobyl.
yeah.
Now, I don't did we talk about this yet? I don't think we did. Um, in Chernobyl, famously, if you don't know somehow, there was a nuclear incident. An incident. Like we don't talk about. I've had a couple of incidents. We don't talk about those anymore. Where one of the reactors melted down, and it was not good. A bunch of people died, and that ground is still not safe to live on for like 100 miles around. And it sent, and this is important, a plume of radioactive material into the atmosphere that affected people thousands of miles away, because that's what happens when a nuclear reactor goes boom. In the basement of Chernobyl, there is a thing called the elephant's foot. You know what the elephant's foot is?
Mm-mm.
Well, let me tell you, it's only the most poisonous thing on the face of the earth, literally the most toxic thing known to man. It is the result of all this nuclear material melting through all of the wires and cement and steel in Chernobyl until finally it got into the sub basement and couldn't go any further. They've tried to send like robots in to take pictures of it and stuff. There's only like 4 pictures of the elephant's foot because the robots melted from the radiation. Also, it's true that there's still like 200 people who work at Chernobyl. They have to go in incredibly short shifts because only one of the reactors melted down when that happened. All the other reactors are still there, and all of their nuclear material, including all the spent rods, are still at Chernobyl. That's all still a real thing. So when the Russians came in and the first thing they took was Chernobyl, there were people who were like,
Fuck.
why is that happening? That's a stupid. Why would you even? Because the Ukrainian nuclear, whatever department it is in charge of nuclear stuff, was like, "Hey, were you gonna let us
They not
go?"
only took Chernobyl, but those employees that you're talking about, they showed up and basically pulled guns on them, and they're like,
Yeah,
you got to do your job because we don't want to blow this whole facility up. So do your
right,
job and don't mind us pointing our guns at you while you try to work."
right,
So you ever work and someone's like staring at you and it's really uncomfortable?
right.
I imagine
Yeah.
that's even
Like
more so when you
Jesus,
have guns.
micromanaging much. Just let me do my job. Yeah, but it's scary and weird because they literally didn't have to do that. Chernobyl, in and of itself, does not have any value whatsoever, and maintaining it and having troops on that ground, which again is still poisonous, is incredibly risky and dangerous. Why would they bother? And then there's another nuclear power plant that they just like. Did you see this? They cut the power to this nuclear power plant, and the nuclear authority or whatever was like, could we need to repair that, like, and then they were like, don't worry, there's plenty of water in the cooling tank that should last for about 48 hours, and everybody was like, well, all right, fantastic. And then the Russians were like, okay, cool, like you can come fix it. They fixed it, and then less than a day later they tore the lines down again, and they had to be like, can we fix it? So there are people who are suggesting that Putin's whole plan really is to just go in and take over all the nuclear power plants until he has enough nuclear power plants where he can just be like, everybody in the world needs to fuck the fuck off, or I'm blowing all of these motherfucking power plants.
And I was surprised to hear this. There's like between 14 and 17 nuclear power plants in
Yeah.
Ukraine.
Ukraine is the
So,
second largest producer of nuclear power in Europe.
yeah.
So that's weird and intense and bizarre.
That's
I
fun to
don't.
think about at night when you're about to go to sleep.
Yeah, because no, it's actually quite weird when you think about it because, like, and I've been, again, we don't know that the information that we're getting here in the good old US of A is 100% grade A verifiable truth because America, and this is true, I don't know if you know this, They love propaganda here in the US of A. We get told bullshit all the time. It's part of the reason we can have conspiracy theories because it's so easy to be like, well, how do you know it's not lizard people? Because look at all this other garbage they told us that turned out to be totally bullshit. We don't know that that's true. We don't know any of that's true. But some of the reports that we're getting are that Putin has sent in essentially a bunch of 19-year-old kids who are untrained, poorly organized, have 35-year-old weapons and old tanks. They're
Yeah,
living on beans, like
yeah.
all kinds of shit. We're hearing about this all the time, which to
Uh,
me,
a lot of them apparently didn't even know that they were being sent there. They're just
right.
like, get in the van, and then all of a sudden they're on a fucking war front, and they didn't
Yeah.
even know.
Yeah. Here's a word to the wise kids. Anytime anybody's like, get in the van, don't worry, you'll figure it out when we get there. Say no, don't go. That's not what you should do. You should not. You should go do anything else in the world. But that that doesn't make any sense to me. Like that's either A got to be bullshit or at least a gross over exaggeration or something else because Vladimir Putin is not a stupid person. He's a crazy motherfucker and a megalomaniac, but he's not stupid. He's a famously excellent like what do they call that? Strategist,
Hmm.
famously like amazing strategist. He has been doing this for a super duper long time. Why would he just send in a bunch of poorly armed untrained. It's not like Russia doesn't have a
Uh,
giant army full of people who are super trained. Like,
he's playing a war of attrition, so he's gonna send in like a bunch of kids first, and he doesn't care if his own troops die. I mean, he's got an
right,
unlimited number of them.
right.
So he's just gonna keep, pressing and pressing and pressing until he wears them down because he has
Yeah.
a bigger army. It's,
I saw a thing yesterday that said final push, the final push into Ukraine. And I was like, final push into Ukraine? Like that guy hasn't even run out of 19-year-olds yet.
yeah, right.
Like there's no fight. This is obviously, and it's so sad because like he obviously is just feeding those kids to the war machine,
Yeah.
just feeding them to the ground.
Oh
I
yeah.
did I did think it was sweet when I saw that Ukrainians were like, "Hey, if you can get to Kiev, like come pick up your kids." Like they essentially let the soldiers call home, and then they started a whole organization that was like, "If your kid is here, and you can come get him,
Yeah.
and we'll just send him home to you." But then that's really scary too, because right now in Russia, you can get 15 years in prison just for saying the war is a bad idea.
Hmm.
Can you imagine being a kid who like got put in the van, got put in the oh no van, and just showed up in Ukraine, where most of these people have family. Like it's not like they have family, people vacation in Ukraine. It's like the Florida of like Russia, um, and then being like, okay, well, I'm captured now, but if I go home, for sure, that'd be bad. If they find out I abandoned the military, like that's scary shit. It just makes me wonder what Putin is up to because like that just doesn't make any sense to me. It just seems like a real sloppy way to have been going about it. And the thing with the nuclear power plants definitely weirds me out. I wish there were more beast masters of Kiev because we
Yeah.
could really use some beast masters of Kiev and some powerful witches and like I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to see how a lot of people are standing their ground and fighting. So
Yeah.
um oh, one thing I want to mention before we ban Chernobyl. Speaking of myths, of course, before Chernobyl, you know, exploded, um, guess who allegedly showed up there, according to internet mythology? That
It
was our
was my boyfriend, the
yes,
Mothman.
Mothman.
Yeah, he's
Supposedly was
everywhere.
sighted flying over the power plant there.
He's very worldly. Like he's always where things are happening. He is at the best parties always, and like yeah, you're never bored when you're kicking it with Mothman for sure. Yeah, definitely. If you were a harbinger of doom, you would think he would show up at Chernobyl because that was one of the doomiest doom fests that ever doomed, for sure. And like 3 Mile Island, all that kind of stuff, definitely. Um, yeah, I don't know. Russia too is I don't know if you know this, fucking huge. Like it's a really huge, large, McLarge,
Mind-boggling
huge place.
huge, yeah.
Like it's really, really big. And like a lot of it is just dense, like crazy dense forest that nobody even goes into ever, because it's like there are still native tribal peoples, indigenous peoples of the Russian steppe that like they just don't even know nothing about nothing, because nobody ever bothers them because they're so far up in the fucking steppe that like thousands of miles away from anybody else. They don't
Yeah.
even ever see us ever. I If there was going to be cryptids anywhere, I would love to talk to some of the people who live way out in the Russian steppes and have never seen cable television, and just be like, okay, what are your monsters? Tell me all about the creepiest weird shit that lives in these incredibly creepy old woods. Maybe that's what they should do. The Ukrainians should find those folks and be like, we need all your
Right.
cryptids. Do you got a Mothman? Do you got a Wolf Man, Dog Man, any kind of beast
Werewolf
man,
man.
bear
Yeah.
wolf, pig man?
Yeah.
Fucking send that guy on down here. Oh, they'd be polar bear men too, probably on account of they're so far north. That'd be
Yep.
dope. I would
Yep.
love that.
Get them loaded on vodka and send them loose. Yeah.
Right? Did you ever hear about Watek the soldier bear?
No.
This is one of my favorite stories. Again, this is a real story. There's actually photographic evidence of this, although the story itself is, I'm sure, quite exaggerated. This
Yeah.
was during World War II, and there was a Polish legion of like soldiers or whatever. And allegedly they were in Algiers at one point, and there was this woman in the marketplace who was selling a bear cub in a bag. So one of the soldiers bought this bear cub, and they brought it back to like camp, and they raised it up, and it became part of like their little entourage or whatever. And there's all sorts of myths about Wojtek, because he wasn't just their mascot. He also like apparently did guard duty. There's a whole story about him foiling an attempt by the Nazis to kill the entire legion, because Wojtek found a Nazi like scout hiding in the latrines and grabbed this guy by the head and dragged him back to the commanding officer. That's one of my favorites about Wojtek. But truly, and this is true, he was trained to take armaments like the great big giant bullets that you put in the huge big guns, and take them on his two legs like he's in the circus, back and forth across the battle lines, because like they were so heavy and it was such a pain in the ass to get them there. And so that's what he spent the whole last part of the war doing, was like taking these huge bullets back and forth to these massive guns from the front lines. The Polish government posthumously awarded him a Medal of Honor, and that legion, that little whatever the 501st or was or whatever, forever their symbol is Wojtek the soldier bear holding one of those bullets on his two back legs. There's a huge statue of him in Poland. I don't remember where, but yeah, he's a legend. Wojtek the soldier bear.
That's so
Wojtek,
cool.
Wojtek means Walter.
Cool.
Walter the soldier bear.
And here Shane once again has found the Wikipedia entry. If people want to check this out, Wojtek is Wojtek. There's an underscore parentheses bear. If you want to read more about good old Wojtek there.
Yeah, I know, you know that one of my partners owns a tattoo shop in Shorewood, and he is very Polish. He's an extremely Polish person. And he actually has this beautiful illustration that he did of Wojtek the soldier bear,
Oh, cool,
with like
cool.
planes flying behind him and like the rays of the sun and everything. I would love it if someone would get that like tattooed as like a full back piece or something, because it's super freaking dupe.
He should make that as like a print or something. That would be really cool.
Right? He really should. It's one of my favorite illustrations of his, actually. I'll see if I can't get it posted here.
Tell him to make it into a print, and we'll link to where people can buy it.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I will.
Cool.
I'm so glad I got to tell you that. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah. The other thing we talked about when we were driving from Paranormal Chicago Con was how great it is that stories evolve over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So I hope 100 years from now, people talk about the Beastmaster and how it was part of this moment of history that we're in right now.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. And like that's the thing. Like, what do they say, that legends never die, right? Because like
Yeah.
you never know. And I think this is important because like you, for example, somewhere in Ireland, there's somebody who still thinks they met the tallest man in Ireland randomly at a bar, because you were there and that's what happened. And I swear part of what keeps me going in life is knowing that at any given time, any fucking random shenanigans that you get up to could be legend for all time, for who even knows, I would like to know, anybody who's watching right now, I would like to know what your legend is. Like at high school or in college or in your little town, there must be a legend of a person, some guy, some person that did something extraordinary, and nobody it's always like my friend's mom's cousin totally met this person, or like my cousin's dad's barber was there and he saw the whole thing, but nobody has ever that. Who was the legend? What happened? I want to know. Was it you? Especially if it was you. Tell us if it was you. I want to know.
Yeah, you should comment now, or if you're listening to the podcast version of this, which comes out later in the week, you can email teasweirdweek@gmail.com, and we can share some of those in the future too. Yeah, I forgot I told that story. Okay, the story was I left a bar in Ireland. It was bar closed, and these two Irish women were stumbling down the street next to me, and they started talking to me about me, even though I was right next to them. And one of them was like, "Have you ever seen a man this tall in your entire life?" And the other one goes, "No, he's certainly the tallest man in all of Ireland." I was like, "All right,
It's
I'll
so
take
funny because T is infamously a local treasure, but also he's an Irish legend. So that's real life.
it."
Real life. I definitely have had moments where people came up to me and we're like, oh my God, you're that person. But it's almost never for something cool I did. It's always for some like ridiculous bullshit where I like fell down and landed face first in the street or something like that, and then did a somersault and jumped up and asked for a beer or something ridiculous. I'm like, God, nobody's ever around when I do super. Shane says, "Oh, I've got legends, but don't have enough time to tell them all."
Well,
Well,
damn.
well, Shane, we're never gonna run out of beer, dude. Like, it's fine. It's totally fine. We should do another thing like the ghost story happy hour that we did,
Yeah,
except where everybody tells the biggest
yeah,
legends, because those are always the best bar stories anyway. Absolutely
yeah.
fantastic fish stories. My mom would have said they were
Big fish
them
story. Yeah,
big fish stories.
yeah.
Love it. Fantastic.
Uh, so we're talking about Ukraine and legends coming out of there, but these legends are classic to any war, I would guess. I'm sure that there was
Yeah.
many like ghost stories and tall tales about the Revolutionary War and the Civil
Oh,
War and the
sure.
World Wars and all that. I mean, and one of the most infamous, of course, the
Did I
Nazis.
go? Wait,
The
did I?
Nazis.
I think
Are you
I
there?
lost you. Oh, there
Oh,
you are.
oh, okay.
Sorry.
You kind of cut out for a second.
It's the aliens, dude. It's the lizard people. They don't want the truth to be out.
Yeah, right. So we're talking about one of the most infamous of these sources of wartime legends was the Nazis, because they did play around with uh, you know, the occult, and
Yeah, they did.
were very interested in trying to channel that to help the Third Reich by finding lost artifacts. And supposedly they had, a secret base under Antarctica, and they had UFO technology and all sorts of stories. But you reminded me of this great, you know, sort of legend that they channeled. It was called the Werewolf Division,
Hmm.
right? Um,
Yeah.
this was after Hitler had killed himself, but of course the Nazi Party lived on, and so maybe to instill more fear, they were trying to portray themselves as this vicious, like, group of werewolves that were still picking off the Allies here and there.
Yeah, I was reading about it, and it's actually really interesting because, I mean, the Nazis were obviously like Nazis and are still Nazis, and they should all get terrible yeast infections and herpes of the asshole right now, today, and forever. Yeah, you heard
Yeah,
me. I said it. Don't come around me being a Nazi. It's not going to go well for you. Um, but they were very into the occult, and they were very, very good at propaganda. And the wolf was a thing that was already a big part of their symbolism, of Nazi symbolism. And the reason it was because it was this thing that was vicious and wild and savage, but also very much belonging to the land, and like that whole blood and soil shit that the Nazis were so hep on or whatever. So yeah, after Hitler had already died, and there was still thinking in Nazi Germany at that time that maybe they could still win, but the people who were at that place were so deluded and so desperate, like they were like desperate. It was sad and desperate. Um, that they created the werewolf division where they encouraged German people, not just soldiers, because there was an official werewolf division that was like a part of the military. And then there was just like werewolves, German werewolves, which was them encouraging regular people to go and like embody this wolf part of like themselves that was this German part of themselves. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Hitler's like number one hangout place, he actually named it the Wolf's Den. Like that
Mm.
was a part of his whole shit. To just go and like not just attack soldiers, but specifically to attack any German people who were hiding, people who were leaving the war or were housing like soldiers who had abandoned their posts or whatever. And apparently some real nasty shit went down, because anytime you tell your neighbors to turn on their neighbors, there's going to be finger pointing and Salem witch trial shit and like people taking out old grudges and paranoia, and that's exactly what happened. So there weren't any actual werewolves, although they did work very hard to try and create the illusion that this was a supernatural event and
Yeah.
that there were in fact German people turning into beasts and attacking people, and that that's what was happening. And it worked because it's not like we didn't understand even at that point that the Nazis were super into all kinds of wacky occult shit. Even the swastika itself, infamously, we were talking about this at the paranormal
All
conference too.
right. Yeah.
The swastika was at one point in time a good luck symbol for lots and lots of different cultures, and like was a mystical symbol, right?
Yeah.
It'd be like if they had chosen the yin yang or something like that's
Right.
just, or a four-leaf clover. Like they were about magic and about like being raised up out of the mundane world and put in their place as the blah 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 blah. Which is, I mean, obviously that didn't work out too great for them, but it made for really good propaganda because there were like the German people specifically. Honestly, I think at some point thought that Hitler was a fucking wizard, like a legit, according to Hoyle, like supernaturally powered, airbrushed on the side of a van fucking wizard. And like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's part of the reason that the Nazis did as much Nazi shit as they did, because Hitler
Yeah.
had that kind of power. And not
Yeah.
in real, I mean, he wasn't a wizard. I mean, like he had the power to convince people he was one.
He had
Yeah,
enough belief in it that he pursued it. Like people
yeah,
have seen Indiana Jones when he's searching for the Holy Grail, and that's the Nazis really did look for artifacts like the Holy Grail and
yeah,
other mystical items because they thought that hey, if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But if we can find this and it does work, then
right,
why not
right,
explore that option to defeat our enemies with sorcery? Because it
right,
could be true. We don't know.
right. And what if, like, I mean, what if they did? What if they had? What if they? Because I mean, there's so many conspiracy theories about that. So many conspiracy theories. My God. But there are people who think that the Nazis actually did find these artifacts. Absolutely 100% part of the reason that they managed to go as far as they did is because they did have access to magic, because the German military has this reputation in the modern world for being this highly efficient, super organized machine. Except it super wasn't. It was actually kind of a mess, and it actually wasn't that well administrated. And there are lots of places and times during World War II and even before World War II where, like, on paper, the Nazis should have just gotten the shit knocked out of them and just like gone back home and like been like, never mind, and I don't know, made schnitzel and forgot about it.
Mhm.
But somehow they kept on enduring, and it's not because they were so well put together, because they weren't. And that just reinforced this idea that maybe they had something else going for them, like
Yeah.
magic.
So Shane has mentioned a couple of other great World War II. This first one might be World War One. I'm not sure if it's
Gremlins.
World War One or World War II. But people know of Gremlins from the great, one of the best movies ever,
Oh
the
yeah.
'80s Gremlins movie.
Yeah.
But some people might not know that that actually does come from a war myth of
Yeah.
gremlins, where people believe that these little creatures would sabotage airplanes and other machinery, and
Yeah.
that was causing them to crash and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and then the Foo Fighters, most people know that as a band, but that's what they called UFOs in World War II before the term UFO or even flying saucer existed. A lot of fighter pilots would report seeing these weird flying saucer objects, and that's what they called them.
Yeah. Do you know where that name comes from? The Foo Fighters?
No.
I mean, this is what I've heard. I've not done any extensive research. If anybody knows better than me, please correct me if I'm wrong. My father always told me that it came from foo dogs. You know, foo dog is it's this little mythological Chinese creature that looks
Hmm.
like a dog dragon or whatever, but they were supposed to have magic powers, and one of their magical powers was that they could appear and disappear at will. And because these objects seem to move so quickly that they seem to appear and disappear at will, they called them Foo Fighters.
Wow,
Yeah.
very cool.
Wow, we get to talk about Foo Fighters and Wojtek the Soldier Bear in the same episode.
And
Mothman made a cameo.
Gremlins, my favorite. Uh,
Dude, that scared me so bad when I was a kid. I totally believed in gremlins. A
I want
hundred
to.
percent.
This is my dream project, by the way. I hope I have time to do it this year. But if you're listening, and you don't know, we organized an event called Milwaukee Krampusnacht. We have a Krampus parade,
So
right?
fun. So fun.
I want to build like a miniature float that has the Gremlins singing Christmas carols on it.
Amazing.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Okay. Okay. Here. Okay. This is okay. So one of my favorite, because I loved that movie so much when I was a kid. Like I loved it. Like it for my creepy little weird kid heart was just the best thing in the universe.
Yeah,
There's that scene where they're in the theater, remember, and they're
yeah,
all singing
yeah,
with
yeah,
along to Snow White or whatever.
yeah.
There's this one gremlin because the whole cast of gremlin characters in that whole thing is just I would collect every single one of them.
Uh-huh.
But the same gremlin that later is outside the house of that woman
Hmm.
uh, singing Christmas carols,
Yeah,
right with the
Deagle.
book and Deagle, Deagle, Deagle. But this gremlin is dressed in like the Elmer Fudd hunter hat
Yeah, yeah.
and like the buffalo plaid like scarf and like the puffer vest and just looks like every dude at a bar in the Midwest in the middle of December. And I've
Totally.
always really badly wanted to get a tattoo of that gremlin that
That
says
particular gremlin. Yeah.
that particular gremlin with a banner underneath it that says Midwest nice. Fucking favorite. I'm super about organizing the Gremlin Carol. God,
Yeah.
that's wow, what a fun time. There's actually a couple of really good, like weird, creepy Christmas movies that are out there that we could definitely do a nod to that way.
I
100%.
would love to see it expand to include more like Christmas horror in
Yep.
general, you know. So
This is a good idea. This is a good idea, T. Is someone writing this down? Shane, are you writing this down?
I'll remember. I think about it all the time, so I'll remember.
Outstanding. I think we could have a best gremlin costume contest. I think that would be super fun. Spectacular. There's so many good choices. The gremlin and leg warmers, breakdancing in the bar,
Yeah,
spectacular.
yeah,
The blues gremlin in the back with the sunglasses who shoots the gremlin with a puppet. Wow, love
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
I'm gonna think about this till next Christmas, T. I just know it. Love it.
Okay, so this is our next topic that we got for tonight. Um,
Nice segue.
weird smuggling news. Andrew, our sound engineer, posted this one in the T's Weird Week Facebook group, and this is one hell of a party, as they say. But the headline is Ghost Boat Carrying $80 million of cocaine washes up on remote Marshall Islands. That is a lot of coke. No one was on board. No one was on board this boat.
No, they probably did a bunch of coke and just swam to wherever they were supposed to be next. I love the ghost boat stories because you never know what happened in the ghost boat stories. You never know. And obviously, like, okay, we actually did a show where we were talking about ghost boats not long ago. You remember that? Remember that?
Yeah.
And people who are like, I don't know, boring and not fun at parties will always be like, oh, well, like any totally rational, reasonable thing could have made blah, 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 blah. But there was no evidence of any fire. There was no evidence of any engine failure. There was no evidence of anything being wrong with the ship. And if it was pirates, which is the big explanation for most people make for most ghost boats, is probably these people were looted by pirates. Because pirates, I mean, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Especially in certain parts of the ocean. There's like the Somali pirates are notorious for just like, don't even bother, like you're going down. If there had been pirates, do you not think that they would have, I don't know, taken the $80 million worth of cocaine with them?
Yeah.
I feel like they would have. I feel like there would have had to have been a pretty damn good reason for the people on that boat to leave the boat and not take the cocaine with them. Right? Like a pretty good reason.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
there was nothing wrong with the boat. So what happened there?
Something happened and they had to bail the fuck out of there real quick.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, and you know what else? Nobody ever comes forward and is like, you know, that boat that you found that it didn't have anybody on it? Well, I was on it, and what had happened was X. And you'd think they would, because that would be a good story. People would pay to know what happened, I'm sure. So all I'm trying to say is probably aliens. I'm not saying it was aliens.
Yeah, right.
But it was aliens.
Could be. It says there was 649 kilos is how much
Jesus
coke
Christ.
on there.
That's so many kilos. God.
Who owned the stash? The only clue is some initials stamped on the units KW. I don't
get it.
But yeah, other than that, not very much else to report.
I also wonder why KW didn't go looking for his cocaine. Like that's kind of it's a lot of coke. Like when it didn't get where it was supposed to be, you would think that KW would have been like, we should probably send it like a helicopter or somebody find my coke. Like you would think that would have happened. It's very strange. It's also very strange to think that apparently the oceans are just like, they're so big. They're huge. The oceans are so biggity big.
Yeah.
They think that there's probably hundreds of boats, empty boats, ghost boats, just floating around,
sailing out there. Yeah.
Yeah, like in the Goonies, just like One-Eyed Willie's boat just floating around, full of skeletons and cocaine. One-Eyed Willie looked like he was a guy who'd take a couple tree four nose beers. Christ. Oh, too much time in River West. Yeah, that was obviously a failure. That was a smuggling fail, I think.
Yeah, big one.
They failed. Hard time. Big time. The other guy you found, he failed pretty hard too, didn't he?
Yeah. So I love the story. It's the headline on this one is Man with 52 bags of reptiles hidden in clothing arrested at California-Mexico border.
Oh, that guy must have smelled terrible. It's terrible.
During a search of the driver, CBP officers discovered 52 bags of reptiles, including 43 horned lizards and 9 snakes, concealed in the man's jacket, pants pockets, and groin area.
Oh, sure. Well, you want to keep those guys warm. They like to be warm and cuddly. Just like, I don't know, you could probably get one reasonably sized snake just like right down the middle of your butt crack, right? And then like maybe a lizard or two up under the taintal area. They're horned lizards though. That sounds uncomfortable.
I know. I was gonna say, care if you're a master level smuggler. I don't think I'd be smuggling any reptiles near my groin area.
I mean, what if they were toads? Toads are soft. It's fine. It's just a little padding. It's totally good. It'd be totally cool. Oh
Oh my
man,
god.
that's so terrible. I mean, like, I get it because like the rules around trading and selling and transporting exotic animals and especially reptiles are extremely intense,
Yeah.
which is why there's all kinds of crime that becomes associated with the buying and selling and trading of we were just talking about this the other day, of exotic animals. So like I get it. That I mean 52 bags of reptiles, that guy could have been looking to make, who
A fair
knows how
amount.
much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably a lot of money.
Yeah.
I just You have to ask yourself how much someone would have to pay you to put a horned lizard near your groin area and just drive that way too. Like you're driving. It's not for a second. Like that guy's going to be chilling for a while in your groin area.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, I know that reptiles can go kind of dormant when it's cold, but I don't think it's cold by the Mexico-California border. So,
Or by the groin area.
right.
Those are two
Groin
not cold
area.
areas. The guy was failing on a lot of levels. Also, though, how did okay, because he was just going through the border, he's just driving through the border.
Hmm.
Right. Was he just a random person that they picked and were like, today's your day, bud? Like, or was there a clue? What tipped them off about the 52 bags of reptiles?
This is an American dude, for one thing. 30-year-old
Okay.
old US citizen. Um, but I think it was just kind of a random search. And what a comedy that search was, because they're like, all right, let me just pat you down here. And they're like, oh, they got a reptile here. And you're, what? Here's another one. And then it's just like, like a clown routine where they're pulling like this long line of handkerchiefs out of his sleeve. They're like, oh, here's some more snakes and uh, a dozen horned lizards over here. And let me just
Oh my God.
bend over and cough. And then, you know,
And a lizard comes
but-
flying out of his butt.
yeah, right,
Wow, that's a rough day for that guy.
yeah.
Because you got to think about it. He woke up that morning and put like 52 bags of like lizards on himself and like had driven all the way to the border while presumably sitting on a bag full of horny lizards. And then he got there and then the police caught him. Like that was a bad day. That was not a good day. No matter how bad your day was, it wasn't as bad as that guy's day, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's our weird smuggling news for this episode. But I do love weird smuggling news. You know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Because they got to get so creative with it. They got to think of new ways all the time.
yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
Okay. Last thing I'll mention this episode. We just made a Facebook announcement. Milwaukee Paranormal Conference, October 14th through the 16th this year. Put it on your calendar if you're listening and you're in the Milwaukee area. We'll have more information in the somewhat near future. So, well, at least we have a date.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. First step. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.